thing that I'm isolating is that he tried to pressure his attorney general and pressure his deputy attorney general to lie to the states, saying that the DOJ had found significant irregularities as a pretext for them to hold a special session. The attorney general and the deputy attorney general multiple times said the DOJ has not found any significant irregularities in the elections, and then Donald Trump tried to fire them because of that. It's not a disagreement, it's you won't lie for me.
So, real quick, now that we can at least agree that Donald Trump, quote unquote, you could say Donald Trump tried to weaponize the DOJ.
Why are you doing the quote unquote? If we're agreeing on it, you don't need to do the quote unquote. You could say Donald J. Trump tried to weaponize the Department of Justice. You agree, right?
Yeah.
If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Rinyald. And if you disagree with anything in the video, make sure you join the Discord and we can have a chat sometime. I'm good.
So am I going first then?
I guess I'll be a mod. Will, we're going first. Trump weaponizing the DOJ would be the topic.
Yep.
Oh, we're not starting with inciting violence?
I think going in timeline order is better. So we're gonna start with weaponizing, go to the uproot democracy, finish with incitement.
Yep. So yeah, Will weaponizing DOJ Trump.
Okay. All right, cool. So I'll just jump right into it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just to clarify what I mean by weaponization of the justice system, I'm referring to things like selective or double standard prosecutions, politically motivated litigation, inadequate proof or violation of rights, things like that. So now my first initial argument when we first spoke is that Trump actually tried to use Bill Barr to send particular letters to states to pressure them to lie and overturn their original results of the election in 2020. And when Barr refused and said that he didn't have any evidence of that, Trump tried to fire him, in your words, and replace him. And when the deputy director said the exact same thing, you said he tried to fire him too, and then replace him with Jeffrey Clark, who would have sent the letter, who actually drew up the letter. So, but I think that it's a completely mischaracterization of the story. So I think the bottom line is Donald Trump did truly believe that the election was being stolen from him, even if he had people like Bill Barr saying there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud, without acknowledging the multiple discrepancies with states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Could you say the optics of firing the attorney general because they have disagreements with the president isn't good? I would assume so. But considering their jobs are to serve at the pleasure of the president, I wouldn't consider it a weaponization of the justice system, and I don't think a lot of people would either. And while there were people telling him there was no evidence, there were also people telling him and giving him legal theories to challenge the election, to pause the election certification, and assess all of the valid discrepancies that were made in each state. So all it is a recommendation in terms of the letter that you have a problem with. All it is a recommendation for Georgia to call a special session to look at compelling evidence of potential voter fraud. Nowhere did they imply that the election had been stolen, just some serious irregularities arose. But since you seemed to be like a guy who makes the claim that no man is above the law, and maybe that's why Donald Trump should be charged for all the crimes that he was faced with in 2023 and 2024. But to me, it seems like a very cliche when people use that specific term, because it also means it would be a meaningless pablum if we unquestionably tolerate or worse celebrate deviations from ordinary processes and principle to get there. And that's exactly what transpired in the cases against Trump. So the most recent bit of news that would actually go to support my argument is the justice system being weaponized, in specifically New York, with the panel of appeals judges that ruled Trump's Eighth Amendment right was violated with $500 million excessive penalty. That was Letitia James's case. And another instance, the one that I usually do like to talk about, is Alvin Bragg's 34 felonies. It's really my favorite. So if nobody knew, before Alvin Bragg was elected as district attorney for Manhattan, the former DA Cyrus Vance Jr. investigated the allegations against Trump by looking into various aspects of Trump's business practices, including the payments made to Stormy Daniels in relation to the 2016 election. And yet no charges were filed. The charges are only filed by a DA who ran for office in an overwhelmingly Democrat county by touting his Trump prowess, hunting prowess, and he bizarrely and falsely boasted on the campaign trail. It is in fact that I have sued Trump over 100 times. Does that seem fishy? Just wait. What about the judge with the judge of the case and his conflict of interest? It is proven that Mershon did donate a total of $35 to an anti-Trump organization. I know you would be saying the exact same thing as me right now if he would have donated to a MAGA Forever organization. We can also go into the Sixth Amendment stuff. I think if we do open discourse at all, I think that would probably be better to bring that up. But I just want to bring up. I like to say my objective in the debate is to show you that my opponent will make blanket statements like Donald Trump incites violence, try to uproot democracy, and weaponize the DOJ, yet will call a whataboutism with criticisms when it comes to politicians on his side of the aisle. And that's the whole takeaway. That criticisms of Trump is selectively applied. And the funny thing is that you're still going to be talking about January 6th and 2020 in regards to the election. But regardless, if you think Trump should be charged or face ethical scrutiny, the American people are well aware of this event, and they still voted for him because they understand the double standard that's being applied. All right, so I'll go ahead and concede that.
Got on 5 minutes. So, Reynold, 5 minutes response or your statements you have.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I think Donald Trump very clearly weaponized the Department of Justice. Donald Trump tried to irresponsibly wield the power of the Department of Justice to report to the states that they had found significant fraud in their election, even though no such fraud had been found, and he had been told that by multiple high-up officials within his campaign and his DOJ. When these letters to the states had been turned away by the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, saying they have no reason to believe there are significant irregularities in this election, Donald Trump attempted to fire his attorney general and replace him with an unqualified environmental civil lawyer in the DOJ who authored the letter, Jeffrey Clark, not Bill Barr, Jeffrey Rosen. The reason Trump never fired his AG due to the threat of an exodus of DOJ civil servants if Jeffrey Clark gained office, because in a cross-examination by one of his other aides, Eric Hirschman, Jeffrey Clark admitted that his first action as Attorney General would be to commit a felony. This is as clear an example of weaponization of the DOJ as you could possibly get, literally pressuring the head of the Department of Justice to lie to the states, saying that they found massive impropriety even though they hadn't, and then whenever they refused to, on the grounds that it would be lying, Donald Trump tried to fire his Attorney General and replace him with a different, more loyal sycophant. I think it's funny whenever Republicans point to J6 being 4 years ago as a reason that no one should care about it, because they're children. It's because they see a red hot stove, and in 2021 they got their hand burnt. And when the adults in the room say, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't stick your hand back on that red hot stove," they say, "Well, that was 4 years ago that it burnt my hand." There's no reason to believe that Donald Trump won't engage in this same exact impropriety again. Trump supporters have refused at every single turn to actually hold their leaders accountable whenever this is an undeniable example of weaponizing the DOJ. It's pretty clear that my opposition clearly didn't look super far into the plot that I'm alleging, because he didn't even know who it was against. He said it was Bill Barr. I never claimed it was against Bill Barr. I've always claimed that it was against Richard Donahue and Jeffrey Rosen. Trying to get the Attorney General to say that there was massive impropriety in an election and send it to the states, even though there was no reason to claim it because the Attorney General said they hadn't found it on behalf of the DOJ, and then trying to fire the Attorney General to replace him with a loyalist who will just repeat what Donald Trump says uncritically is weaponizing the DOJ. That you're not ever going to find a more clear example of it. But okay.
Is that it, Reynold? Or?
Yep.
All right, yeah. Will, 5 minute response to that.
Yeah. So when you want to say that he specifically told them to lie and say that they had found insignificant fraud, I would at least challenge you or tell me exactly in the letter, because this is the evidence that we have, specifically around of what the letter would have, looked like, or what they were trying to shoot out to be, at least goal wise. So I would at least appreciate it if you can show me exactly in the letter, like what you're referring to when they say they found that specific, what you named. So, like you said, reported significant fraud found. So I want to know where it says specifically in that letter where it says significant fraud found. Because from my understanding, even from the start of the letter, you can read it, and it just says that they think that the federal government recommended, or the DOJ recommended, that there should be a special session called between all of these members that the email was sent, or supposed to be sent out to, so that way they can address the allegations and whatnot, because they still felt like they had been done wrong in specific cases, and they were still waiting for the play out on specific ones. Like this is specifically in Pennsylvania. This was a year after the 2020 election, or maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years later. That's when a court had ruled in Pennsylvania that the new law that had been changed right before COVID had hit to expand mail-in voting had actually been ruled unconstitutional. So, and then I don't understand why you want to say that we talk about you just keep talking about 2020 because we're children, considering that you don't want to address from 2020 to 2024 all of the violent actions that the Democrat Party has been responsible of. It's absolutely asinine for you to make the claim that Donald Trump incites violence, and then not look at your other party or look at your own party and say, you know what, we are pretty guilty of this as well, if not worse, with the rhetoric and the violence as well.
I guess, Renner, do you have a response to that? Or
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in the letter, it specifically does recommend that Georgia hold a special session in order to decertify their electors due to there being significant irregularities in how their election functioned. First of all, this is not how the DOJ is supposed to function. They're not supposed to be making recommendations to the states how they run their election. That's not in the federal government's purview. That's in the state government's purview. But regardless, he asked his DOJ to send a letter recommending a special session due to irregularities. The Attorney General said, we haven't found significant irregularities enough to justify calling a special session to decertify these electors. And then again, he tried to fire his Attorney General and replace him with a loyalist who would. When he says, I don't address violent actions by the Democrats, I mean, I don't know okay, I was gonna say I don't know where this came from. I know exactly where this comes from. It's because he came up on a live where I was talking about Donald Trump and he just wanted to pivot off to Democrats. I can hold my own party accountable, but that's what makes me and you different, is because I will call out, I just did it on the live that I was just on, I will call out Democrats who are engaging in crazy rhetoric. I often criticize Democrats. This is why I go out of my way to disassociate myself with the Democratic Party. I'm just saying that there needs to be an adult in the room. When we have some party that does the typical political party things of being irresponsible in its rhetoric sometimes, but you divert onto an entire party's activity to move away from the person that you voted to lead the free world, doing everything that you criticize this big conglomeration of doing. It's way worse for one person to be culpable of something than an entire party to be culpable of something. If you're not holding your president accountable for inciting violence, I'm not going to listen to your calls for the Democratic Party to reform their rhetoric, because you haven't even gotten to the table of holding the person who leads the free world to that standard. You haven't actually taken account for the fact that Donald Trump has weaponized the Department of Justice to throw out election results to instate himself as the president. You let him walk on that. You literally elected him so he could get away from criminal culpability for it. I don't want to hear like this fucking tone policing over my rhetoric when you voted in Donald Trump, an insurrectionist. Okay, I don't care.
all right,
Yeah, it's funny.
Well, just respond to that real quick, and then I guess we'll head into closings.
Open for a little bit and then closings.
Open for a little bit, like 10, 20 minutes, and then we know closings.
Yeah, so it's funny because when your first opening statement specifically, I think it was a misinterpretation of like exactly how I pointed it out, which was you specifically said reported significant amount of fraud found. And when you say, and then you're kind of pulling back when you're saying that these people are making recommendations for the special sessions, it's not uncommon. And I actually did make the claim that the DOJ has nothing to do with the elections and whatnot, but they do have the authority arm to oversee specifics, especially in terms of the federal election, even if the states have violated federal election laws. And when you want to say that, because you're basically saying that because Donald Trump had a disagreement with his attorney general, it's a weaponization of the DOJ to fire him. But I'm sorry to say, these jobs are serving at the pleasure of the president. He picks them. He can fire them whenever he so chooses. And I don't know if you had. I'm assuming that you probably had a problem with him asking Jeff Sessions to retire, but you would literally just need to go back to that far to understand that this is actually, it's not unprecedented, and it has happened before, even before Donald Trump, and with Jeff Sessions as well. So I don't really understand what your problem is. Is it really that that Donald Trump delegated like how do I say it, a task to a lower end official at the DOJ, because that's not uncommon either. So I'm having trouble understanding where it's weaponization of the DOJ when it's not uncommon for these people, if they have disagreements, if they're not going in the way of the administration in the way that the president wants, he has every right to fire them the same way that he has the authority to delegate any task to a lower DOJ official. And if that's just so happens to because these guys were also citing the letter was also citing the 1960 election, specifically on how they're trying to basically stop them from certifying those slate of electors by a certain time. It's basically a pause. It puts a pause in the system, so that way the goal was to hopefully assess all of the information and also let the legal processes all play out. Because like I stated, in Pennsylvania, they ruled it unconstitutional a year later, and guess what? They ain't going to roll back and say, actually, if it were the case that that so many votes were fraudulent, they're not going to roll back and say, you know what, actually, Joe Biden did lose PA in 2020, but we're not going to do anything about it now. I'm done.
All right. Yeah, Ren, you'll just respond to that real quick.
Okay. It's pretty clear what my criticism is, and there's a reason why he's not taking the totality of what I'm pointing out, and he's just pointing at particularized things. My problem has never been the president replacing his principal officers. I would never make that claim. That's a completely constitutional task. I'm not saying that it's a problem when Donald Trump replaces the heads of his departments in isolation. No one ever said that. I'm not saying that it's a problem. By the way, it wouldn't be delegating a task to a lower level employee. That's not what this looks like. But regardless, if he does that, I don't care. That's not what I'm isolating. The thing that I'm isolating is that he tried to pressure his attorney general and pressure his deputy attorney general to lie to the states, saying that the DOJ had found significant irregularities as a pretext for them to hold a special session. The attorney general and the deputy attorney general multiple times said the DOJ has not found any significant irregularities in the elections. And then Donald Trump tried to fire them because of that. It's not a disagreement. It's, you won't lie for me. It's that the DOJ hasn't found this. I want you to claim that the DOJ has found this, and if you don't, I'm going to fire you. I don't understand how anybody can see that and say, that's not weaponization. He's allowed to fire people, LOL. It's the intent. It's the intent of why he's trying to fire them, and the reason he's trying to fire them is because they're refusing to lie about the DOJ finding significant irregularities.
Oh, yeah, well, go ahead.
All right, cool. Is this still specifically my time, or is it an open now?
No, we're in a open for about, let's see, about 11 more minutes of the open. So y'all just kind of ask questions. I mean, make more points.
Yep.
Yeah. So real quick, I just want to say, when you you kind of straw man my position right there when I said, or you're basically making the straw man for me that I'm making the claim that Donald Trump fired them just because they wanted him, or he wanted them to lie. No, my claim is that there was a disagreement between Donald Trump and the attorney general. Mm-hmm. And then that's what ended up from Bill Barr resigning, and then the deputy attorney general took the spot, and then he would pretty much say the exact thing as Barr.
What was the disagreement on?
The disagreement was because that Bill Barr was saying there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud.
Bill Barr has nothing to do with this plot. We're talking about Jeffrey Rosen and Richard Donahue. Bill Barr had resigned previously because Donald Trump came to the DOJ a billion times and said, hey, can you explain this black box? Okay, that's why Bill Barr resigned. But I'm not saying that's a weaponization. Going to your principal officer to ask about election fraud isn't that shocking. I think it's probably good that he did that. It's bad that he ignored him, but it's good that he did that. The problem isn't that he was going to Bill Barr asking about claims of fraud. The problem is that he was going to Rosen claiming fraud and then tried to fire him if the DOJ didn't back up a false claim that the DOJ had found significant irregularities.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Yeah, but hold on. Because from my understanding, if I understood you correctly, because I was listening in on one of your streams, I thought you specifically said maybe it was because you just said the attorney general as a blanket statement, and I maybe thought it was Bill Barr, but still nonetheless, the disagreement is that he also had people telling him that there were significant amounts of irregularities, plenty of people calling it out. And you had plenty of people, plenty of video evidence that questions never got answered. And specifically, they were in Georgia. One of the reasons why they sent the letter was because the court case that they were trying to have go through didn't even have a scheduling date yet. Mm-hmm. So they were clearly trying to push it back as far as they could past the date of when the certification of the electors actually came. And that's why they had a problem with it and wanted to send the letter.
So in furtherance of proving the claim that the DOJ had identified massive impropriety, or what was it, a significant amount of irregularities, in furthering that claim, who do you think is more important to ask for corroboration?
You said significant amount of fraud.
Okay. We can say significant irregularities. When you're trying to prove the claim the DOJ has identified significant irregularities, who do you think you should ask to substantiate that? Do you think you should ask Rudy Giuliani, or do you think you should ask the Attorney General?
Well, you could ask the Attorney General, but if they're blatantly saying to Donald Trump, while we're all seeing the exact same thing of evidence, straight up irregularities, like specifically in Michigan, when they were covering up the absentee ballot building, they were covering up this facility's windows with Bristol boards, and yet no one answered that question on that.
So
no one ever.
Just out of curiosity, like, who do you think should be responsible for finding fraud? Do you think it should be the Department of Justice? Do you think it should be the courts? Do you think it should be the state investigators? Or do you think it should just be the hunch of the president, and then he can just do whatever he wants based off of that hunch?
If it's in violation of federal law, that's when the federal government can step in.
Who determines if something is in violation of federal law? Is it the president, or is it the Department of Justice and the courts and state investigators?
It is the DOJ, but you cannot say that it was just Donald Trump saying this. Out of everyone in the whole country, specifically statewide and whatnot.
The problem is that he was claiming that the DOJ found it, and the DOJ did not find it. Unequivocally, the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General had told Donald Trump unequivocally the DOJ has not found this, and he tried to fire the Attorney General to replace him with somebody who said the DOJ had found it. That is a lie.
Is defined, or what would finding irregularities or finding irregularities mean that it would be fraud or something like that? I'm kind of having trouble understanding what you're saying.
If Donald Trump was pressuring the Attorney General to send a letter claiming massive impropriety or significant irregularities, the Attorney General tells him the DOJ has not identified that. Then he tries to fire the Attorney General to replace him with a different guy who wants him to claim the same exact thing that he was already told was a lie. That is lying. It's a very simple, very coherent point. I don't understand how this is getting looked past.
Well, my specific reasoning is that I don't think that people saying, because Donald Trump wanted to do what the people he hired to do exactly under his rule, specifically if they're denying what he's doing, I don't know if you would want to call it insubordination, but I don't think he's giving them a direct.
What's the insubordination, by the way, is refusing to lie to the states about the DOJ finding massive or significant irregularity. That's the insubordination.
You're failing to acknowledge. Okay. Then give me this information. This information.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the explanation as to, maybe in one of the cases, let's say, give me the explanation that Bill Barr gave to Trump, or not Bill Barr, but he was saying the exact same thing, that there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud in Pennsylvania, because Trump gave this exact same reason. This is one of the cases about why I specified about changing the election laws with the mail-in voting. So this was already a problem. And yet, how does it say that there's no spread?
Why didn't he send the letter to PA?
Say that again.
Why didn't he send the letter to PA?
Well, why wasn't the letter sent to Georgia?
It was sent to Georgia.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Jeffrey Clark.
Do we need to find it out?
With Jeffrey Clark's letter?
Yes.
That was not sent.
Oh, no, they were proposing that it would be sent to Georgia.
Yeah, and it didn't get sent, right?
Yeah, so why didn't he propose it be sent to Pennsylvania?
Wait. So then let me hold your feet to the fire right here. You make the affirmative statement Donald Trump weaponized the DOJ.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to make the claim Donald Trump tried to weaponize the DOJ. Right?
Yeah, sure. Do you think that makes you look any better?
Well, specifically, if you want to go into the other instances of weaponizing the DOJ, I'll agree with you there. You could say that he tried to weaponize the DOJ, yet he failed, right?
Yes, as long as you agree that he did pressure the Attorney General to lie to the states for him. Yes.
Yeah,
I think that's a horrible way of interpreting it, because I don't think that.
How is that a misinterpretation?
I think that we all know that Donald Trump really did think that he was losing the election, whether or not people were saying on his side or off of his side that there was inconsistencies or there wasn't. He thought that, and he was calling it out from the jump.
No, he was asking the Department of Justice. He was asking the Department of Justice to claim there was impropriety on behalf of the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice said there wasn't, and then he tried to replace the leadership in the Department of Justice so they would lie.
Well, okay, let me ask you this then. If it's just the AG and the Deputy Attorney General who is saying that there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud, but yet everyone else at the DOJ, or at least 75% of them, are saying that there is widespread voter fraud, and they just don't want to overturn the election optic wise because it would overthrow the country pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to that then?
Nothing.
Nothing. So would you take the AG's words? Like, or I should say this: if there's plenty of whistleblowers and people with big names in the DOJ who then would come out and say, you know what, there was voter fraud here, and yet Jeffrey Rosen decided to ignore it.
I mean, we could have that argument if it's a credible whistleblower saying, hey, there is actual real impropriety and the Attorney General is purposefully not investigating it. I would say, yeah, that may be cause for firing. That case didn't exist for Jeffrey Rosen.
Okay, cool. So real quick, now that we can at least agree that Donald Trump, quote unquote, you could say Donald Trump tried to weaponize the DOJ.
No. Why are you doing the quote unquote? If we're agreeing on it, you don't need to do the quote unquote. You could say Donald J. Trump tried to weaponize the Department of Justice. You agree, right?
Yeah. We can go with that.
Real quick, guys, the agreement would be that Trump tried to weaponize the DOJ but failed to do so.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Okay, so
let me just ask a couple of questions real quick to get a better understanding.
Well, after you ask these questions, we're going to go into closing statements.
Yeah, we could go into closing statements.
That's fine. That's fine.
So, we'll ask a few questions and then we know in closing statements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just a couple of quick questions. So, are you aware of at all in terms of the New York cases against Trump?
I'm cursorily aware. I know that all of the appeals failed. I know that it was a novel charge, and I know that with the strength of the classified documents case and with the strength of the J6 case, I think that trying to bring an indictment like that, it was probably not wise. But I don't think it was weaponization, and I don't think there was any top-down directive to do it.
And you're talking about Bragg's case, right?
Yeah.
And you said there was no directive top down, right?
Yeah, Joe Biden never made a call for Alvin Bragg to propose an indictment. Yeah.
Well, when I make the claim that the justice system has been weaponized against Donald Trump, I'm not specifically referring to the federal government's DOJ. Like there can be a weaponization of the justice system within states, right?
Yeah, theoretically, but it's a characteristically different thing. So, like, whenever I'm claiming that Donald Trump weaponized the Department of Justice, the heart of what I'm claiming is that Donald Trump is misusing his executive power. When you're making that claim, you're saying that a prosecutor brought a novel charge, and I don't think he should have. I mean, that's fine, and we could probably agree. I don't know if the New York case was all that pertinent, but the problem is that it's not getting us any closer to like culpability. It's not making any character statements. If you could say, okay, I'm not gonna vote for Alvin Bragg, you got me. But there's no top-down directive from Joe Biden, and when people say weaponize the justice system, that implies a very top-down directive. That implies directive from Joe Biden. If you agree that there was no directive from Joe Biden and you just don't think that the indictment should have been brought, we can probably agree.
No, that's not true. Because then you would basically be saying that Joe Biden is the entire Democrat Party and every decision flies through him in terms of justice-wise, right?
No, I'm saying that if it's brought through the Department of Justice, that falls on the president. So if the president is having a hand in the Department of Justice to basically coerce him to do his bidding, that's weaponizing the Department of Justice. But whenever a novel case gets brought by a prosecutor with no top-down directive from the presidency, I mean, we can argue whether or not it was valid for a jury of his peers to find him guilty on it, which they absolutely did. We can argue whether or not it was appropriate for them to bring the indictment. I probably agree it's not the strongest case in the world, but honestly, I also agree that you are using this to get away from all of the culpability from Donald Trump's thing, and you conceded the entire point of this third of the debate. You agree that Donald Trump tried to weaponize the Department of Justice.
We do have to move into closing statements. So I guess Will would go first on the closing statements. Just 5 minutes real quick. Or any less. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, so specifically, I know this is exactly what I was trying to not stay on, and at least try and hold your feet to the fire a little bit more. But I was assuming that we were going to start with incitement, so it kind of threw me off.
So thank you, Quasi, for the $5.
You didn't really address any of the topics on my situation. It still would go to show that. I mean, we'll probably talk about them later on in the conversation, but hang on, I'm just trying to find my notes here. Sorry. See, I'm out in my truck, so it keeps losing internet service. So if you want to go first, Renial, then I can just take another 2 minutes to recap on mine. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'll reset the timer for you. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
You ain't got to reset it. You can take it doesn't matter. I won't use the time.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, go ahead.
All right. My opponent agrees that Donald Trump tried to weaponize the DOJ. There's not much of a opening statement or closing statement that I can give to that. He kind of conceded on the entire thing. I do want to be clear though that this arrangement of topics, this wasn't a blindside. All right, I sent this to Bentley 2 hours ago, and he saw it and he agreed to it, and it was in the chat. All right, this wasn't a mystery of how we were ordering things. So I want to make sure that there's no claims of impropriety or anything. But yeah, I mean, we conceded Donald Trump tried to weaponize the DOJ. I agree. It's not much to close on. That was a full concession.
So just to clarify, Reno, you're saying the intent is what matters here, right?
Yeah, the intent as it relates to the president. I mean, we can have a separate conversation as to whether or not Alvin Bragg's indictment was a valid thing to bring. I can read more into the case law and we can have that conversation if you really want to. But honestly, I mean, when my claim against Donald Trump overall is that he's somebody who is just interested in centralizing executive power, I think weaponizing the DOJ is something that is incredibly important to show there, and no such claim can be made about any Democrat who has held the presidential office, but or at least in modern history, whereas Donald Trump unequivocally did it, and my opposition agreed.
All right, well, do you have anything to say to that for your closing statement? Or
yeah, so specifically, I might have conceded, but I think that we have a fundamental disagreement in terms of when we talk about the weaponization of the justice system, which is the definition or something like that I would use, rather than you're saying weaponization of the DOJ, and you're specifically saying that this has to come top down, and that's my disagreement with it. Is that because from your logic, you would basically saying that the only way that there to be a weaponization of the justice system is for it to come top down from Joe Biden, from his directive. And you're only saying that just because he is in charge of the Department of Justice, and I would assume that you're not going to make the claim that Department of Justice actually runs through the whole system, overseeing pretty much everything. So in terms of the weaponization of the DOJ, if you can say that, if you want to have a bigger conversation, a longer conversation about it, we can. I think that you say that a lot, but yet you don't want to actually have the conversation, because if you want to have a conversation about how they blatantly violated Donald Trump's rights, which I'm not going to go into right now, but I really could. If you wanted to extend the conversation, we can, and I can explain it to you and sacrifice what's that?
Set a date.
Oh, you want to just specifically talk about the cases against Trump?
We can.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, I think it might have been a losing topic for me to specifically run with just Donald Trump weaponizes the DOJ. I think I should have probably asked to kind of hold both sides accountable, or at least have some side, or at least time both sides for the accountability. But that's on me. My first debate. I'm not really too harsh on myself about it.
Yep, that's
You're
fine.
good, Will. So Will, you're up first on this one, I guess. Donald Trump uprooting democracy, 5 minute opening. I just randomly will do a 5 minute opening, then we'll go into open.
Mhm.
So, all right,
Okay, that's
cool.
fine.
Go ahead.
All right. So pretty much, from my understanding, the one this argument that you give for uprooting democracy, at least from what I heard from you in the past, was basically that Trump was telling Mike Pence to not certify the 2020 election. But let me just try and pose you a hypothetical. So, what if it were the case that in the next 6 months that Donald Trump's DOJ finds evidence of widespread voter fraud, at least enough to flip a state like Georgia or Pennsylvania? Who would be the real subverters of democracy then? The people who actually suspected the fraud and tried to investigate, or the people who said no, nothing to see here. The main issue I have with your statement pretty much would have to be is that with Trump telling Pence to throw out the certification of the vote, I would assume you would be implying that he knew he lost. But in Donald Trump's view, he was trying to save democracy from getting uprooted. And the things uh, we well, the thing is that we might not like it, but he has every right and or to have the thought that he lost the election, even with the people saying nothing to see here. And a lot of people will say Pence's team was also telling him he didn't have the authority to delay the certification, but it's not that black and white. Trump still has the right to suggest legal action, and suggesting to delay or deny the certification. It's not. It was not illegal in or specifically like law wise. Um, Another question I'd just like to ask is, what's more anti-democracy, what Trump did and what with Pence and the alternate electors, or which ultimately, just like to say, ended up leading nowhere pretty much. But what would you rather, or what's more anti-democracy? Would it be that, or compared to Joe Biden, who had a mandate bestowed upon him when entering office with COVID and because of the events on January 6th, he basically could do whatever he wants, which includes encouraging the censorship of big tech of people who question the 2020 election. So if you're so concerned about the actions that would lead to the uprooting of democracy and not just just using a double standard, then show me show me your open concern for the Obama administration pushing the now known lie of the Russia interference with the 2016 election to help Trump win, which undermines the incoming administration and hampers them from doing their job. Truthfully, I think that if you're one to make all of these critical statements about Donald Trump, but yet will turn a blind eye to the spotlight when the spotlight is on your side of the aisle, I think that's a little bit disingenuous to come out and debate. So,
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, Brandon, 5 minute starting opening for you, and then we can jump into like 20 minutes open time though.
Yep, no problem. So the Trump campaign engaged in a pressure campaign against the vice president to get him to unilaterally decertify electors, which is self-admittedly against the Electoral Count Act. We obviously don't live in a country where the VP can just choose the winner of the election against the will of the people. If we did, why did Kamala Harris not just certify her own victory? This fundamentally was an attempt to remove the say of 7 states who voted for Biden, and shows again that Trump does not view American values as something to be upheld. Rather, he views it as a roadblock in his pursuit of power. It's incredibly clear that Donald Trump was not just trying to investigate election irregularities, considering he told Vice President Pence explicitly that he prefers the option in which he just unilaterally bypasses congressional debate and decertifies the Biden electors and certifies his fraudulent electors. That is not a continuance of the election. That's not even putting a pause on the election. He literally just asked Mike Pence to unilaterally choose the winner of the election, and they conceded multiple times in multiple different conversations with multiple different people, including in the Eastman memo, that this would be a violation of the Electoral Count Act. So when we claim this was just legal advice, it's funny you claim that I was just going to narrativize and make blanket statements without going into any of the details. When you say this was just legal advice, the legal advice that Donald Trump was giving to the vice president was to break the Electoral Count Act. That was the legal advice. That was the genius legal advice that was given to Mike Pence. And that genius legal advice caused 2 of his lawyers to have to write public apologies to the state of Georgia for trying to steal their election. And that that great legal advice led to the person who authored it, John Eastman, getting disbarred. So this is the kind of great legal advice that Donald Trump and his lawyers were offering to the vice president, just saying, hey, maybe you should break federal law to make me president. What a good legal theory. It's ridiculous. It was obviously illegal. It's obviously anti-democracy. There's no real argument. There's a reason that when this went to trial, when Donald Trump was before the Supreme Court in Trump v. US, he didn't say, I didn't do this. He didn't say this wasn't anti-democracy. He didn't say this was legal. What he said was, I'm the president. I should get presidential immunity. He didn't contest any of the details that Jack Smith laid out. So, I mean, we can make the pivots to Obama Russiagate. I mean, there's absolutely evidence of Trump's administration absolutely, preventing Mueller from looking into all of the evidence, considering multiple of his advisors were tried and found guilty of lying to Congress in order to obstruct the investigation. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. Russia absolutely did interfere with the 2016 election. That is absolutely proven. You can look at the IRA indictment, and you can look at the Twitter files things. There was never a threat of force by the DOJ to tell Facebook or Twitter what their terms of service should be. There was never any actual pressure. It was literally just suggestions, which Donald Trump has made suggestions to the social media accounts for terms of service as well. He literally called on, I think it was Jack Dorsey at the time, to take down some comedian calling him a pussy ass bitch. That's way less defensible than Joe Biden trying to uphold the sanctity of our election against somebody who is knowingly lying to undermine all faith in that institution. And to close off, my ultimate question is, if Donald Trump truly was just suspect of the way that the election was being held, was suspect about the black box in Georgia that his lawyer ended up admitting to knowingly lying about, but saying it was his First Amendment right to do it. Whenever we're saying that Donald Trump actually truly thought that the election was just stolen and it just sucks that that's how it unfolded, why did he say the same exact thing about 2024? Why did he say the same exact thing about 2016? And why did he say right before the election occurred, why did he say there's no way that I lose and it's not rigged? That it's incredibly obvious. He undermines the sanctity of every single election he's ever been a part of, including the ones he won. So I don't understand how this isn't an incredibly transparent plot from the president. But keep in mind, the legal theory that Donald Trump was furthering was for the vice president to violate the Electoral Count Act. That's the great legal theory.
Cool. So 20-minute open conversations. If y'all have questions for each other, just go ahead. Just don't get too heated. All right.
Yeah. So did you forget that the job of the president during that session really wasn't clarified up until 2022?
Yes, the thing that clarified the vice president's role in the electoral counting process was the Electoral Count Act or the Electoral Reform Act of 2022. But if they were asking him to violate the Electoral Count Act, why would it matter to reform the law that they were asking him to break? Obviously, he doesn't care about the sanctity of the law. He was asking him to violate that law.
But if that law was, but how are you going to violate the law if it's not specific in the job of the vice president?
Because ask Eastman. Eastman explicitly said this is where we diverge from the procedure laid out in the Electoral Count Act. What they were asking him to do is bypass congressional objection. That's how it violated the Electoral Count Act.
But not at the time.
Yes, at the time.
How?
It was self-admitted. Eastman said it was against the Electoral Count Act.
Off of what Eastman says? You're just basing it off of what Eastman says right now, right?
Okay, let's say that it wasn't against the law.
Not the actual law going against the law, right?
We could go into the law, but let's say that it wasn't against the law. Do you think it makes it any better when we're speaking to the state of mind of Donald Trump and his lawyers are saying explicitly that you should break the law to make me president? Do you think that makes it any better?
That's what Eastman said?
Yep. He said you should bypass the Electoral Count Act, you should unilaterally certify Donald Trump's electors, and unilaterally decertify Biden's electors.
Well, I'm almost positive that wasn't the main push even from Donald Trump. Donald Trump was basically trying to delay it so that way they could at least assess the fraud excuse me, because at least the discrepancies and the issues that people were having in the 2020 election.
Yeah, so what he was doing in public was he was asking the vice president to bypass safe harbor, which is the date that the electors need to be certified and the date that the election needs to be certified. He was asking them to delay past January 6th, which was also a violation of the Electoral Count Act, by the way. He was asking him to do that. That's what he was doing in public, but we have correspondence in private from Donald Trump, John Eastman, Greg Jacob, and Mike Pence saying that Donald Trump preferred the unilateral action, that he said that I prefer the option where Pence does it unilaterally.
And this is all just hearsay from the quotes?
You could call it hearsay. I don't know. He got indicted on it.
Other than the hearsay, is there any other evidence to show that this is what Donald Trump wanted?
Yes, it's that Eastman put it in this option in the memo as well. He said that that's the option.
Yeah, but putting it as an option, does that, if you're saying that there's other options on the table, how are you going to say that Donald Trump picked that one and back it up with evidence other than hearsay?
Well, we have testimony that Donald Trump did prefer that option, and when we're looking at the options, we had the Eastman Memo 1, which proposed unilateral action. We have Eastman Memo 2, which first proposed unilateral action, and then proposed 5 other proposals, 2 of which Biden won. So clearly, he wasn't just throwing out proposals for fun. 2 of the only proposal they threw out 2 times was unilateral action by the vice president. It's not until the first, I think it was like a month after the first Eastman memo was proposed that they were talking about putting the delay on the certification of the election to send it back to the states. But that was after. The initial proposal was for Vice President Mike Pence to act unilaterally, to unilaterally decertify Biden's electors and certify Trump's electors, which is robbing the 7 states of their say because they all voted for Biden, and he wanted Vice President Pence to say that they voted for Trump.
Well, do you have a response? Or?
Sorry, hang on. Okay.
Bentley, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I mean, I guess on my stream today, these crazy pro-lifers went up there and called me a low-tier pro-life debater since I said that I didn't know what I would do if like aliens came down and had the right to like unalive them or something. I don't know. It was crazy. I don't know what was going on, but it was really weird.
Wait, can I ask you something? Sorry,
right,
I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. Back to the debate. Yeah.
What do you mean when you say uprooting democracy? I just want to clarify.
I mean, removing the say of the people. I mean, trying to steal the election by making it so the 7 states that voted for Biden to say that they actually voted for Trump and that I'm the president, even though the people voted me out of office.
Well, what if that? Do you remember me asking you that hypothetical?
If it came out that the election actually was stolen?
Like if now, because that's what Donald Trump was talking about. Like I think it was last week, but he was asking. Well, my question hypothetically would be, what if it comes out in 6 months that there would be enough evidence to prove that there was fraudulent ballots and there would be enough to overturn, let's say, a couple of states?
I mean, I think there's no world where that's a reality because every single person who has any authority to investigate the election came and said that there was no evidence of significant fraud in the 2020 election. But in this like 0.00000000001% chance that the election actually was stolen, then I mean, you're probably just gonna need to Bush v. Gore it. You're probably just gonna say, hey, listen, that sucks, but you know, the election was called. That is what it is.
No, but my question would be, who do you think would be the real subverters of democracy? Would it be the people who are actually trying to investigate the irregularities at the time, or would it be the people who are saying nothing to see here?
Well, by extension of Donald Trump still advocating for the vice president to act unilaterally, it would be both parties in this hypothetical. Like if there was a top-down directive by the Democratic Party to steal the election, but Donald Trump still tried to put the hands of the election results solely in one person that he picked, that both parties, you would just say that both parties are anti-democracy at that point.
Yeah, but I don't think that we're in the same agreement that Donald Trump specifically wanted I keep thinking Vance, but Pence wanted Pence to specifically just unilaterally, say that he was the winner. I think what we wanted to see happen was, or at least him to see, at least if anything, a delay in the certification, because that's why they tried the alternate slate of electors. It was basically to put a pause in the system.
I mean, there's nothing else that I can say, but I mean, you're wrong. That they proposed it twice. That's the only proposal that they made twice, and Donald Trump explicitly admitted to Greg Jacob, who is Mike Pence's legal counsel, that he preferred the option of unilaterally choosing the electors. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, every piece of evidence that we have shows that Donald Trump preferred this method. But the fact that they proposed it at all, I mean, like, isn't it kind of crazy that he had one of his lawyers tell the vice president that he should just choose the winner of the election? Don't you think that speaks to him being anti-democracy?
Well, wasn't there a war room game that was specifically going on at the in 2020 that basically the Democrats had crafted the exact same whatchamacallit?
Yeah, the war room was all hypothetical. There was never there was no, first of all, there was no top-down directive from the.
You can't say it wasn't in the question. You can't say that it wasn't in the question of the Democrats' minds, right? Like, because this
sure, it was never it wasn't an attempt. They didn't attempt to do anything like that. It was a hypothetical situation to see what would happen.
But I didn't make the claim that they're trying to attempt it. But I'm saying it was in their playbook at the time.
No, to say that it's in their playbook. No,
tried to uproot democracy, then it's also going to have to be in the Democrats' playbook, which you would also have to say, hey,
to say that it was in their playbook, it suggests that it was actually anything that anybody would even conceive of doing. The war room was literally just running through scenarios in which American democracy dies. This was not a plan by the first of all, I don't even think there was direction by the DNC. I don't think there was any direction by the DNC, first of all. And second of all, they didn't even have the levers of power to do it at the time. So how the fuck are you saying that the Democrats had it in their playbook when they weren't even capable of doing it at that point? And when there was no elected official that came out in support of it, Joe Biden never came out in support of it. Kamala Harris never came out in support of it. It was literally just something that John Podesta ran through, and they all agreed, hey, that would be pretty fucking bad if it happened. And they were like, they all said yes. And that's what the war room situation was.
Who the hell is going to say, okay, well, if this happens in the November election, this is exactly what we're going to do to try and help our case? That's not
what the war room scenario was.
Tell me what the war room scenario was.
It was literally just going through the different situations if no real winner could be declared.
Well, but specifically this, in terms of the worst case scenario for the Democrats, which would be they won the popular vote, but lost the electoral vote. Uh-huh. That's specifically their plan, which was what exactly happened in 2016.
No, that wasn't a plan. That was not a plan. No. That was a scenario.
Okay, the outcome of it was, in this scenario, that they were doing the exact same thing, basically, and using other states like California and not having them certify their electors and things like that.
That was never, again, it was never a plan. There was never any member of the Democratic Party that said that's what we should do. Donald Trump explicitly pressured his vice president to do it. It's not the same at all. This is a diversion.
I'm not making the claim that it was in the Democrats were solely planning this. I'm saying that it was in their playbook. Was it not?
What is typically in a playbook?
Well, it would be different plays that you could run, pretty much.
Yeah, what's a synonym for different plays I could run?
That doesn't mean it's their sole plan.
They're not plans. They're just like plans. Plan. Yeah, no, they're not plans. These were scenarios. These were not real world applications. No one ever suggested doing any of this except for Donald Trump, the person that you voted for. And if you don't think that this was a relevant thing to bring up to show culpability for the Democrats, why the fuck did you bring it up?
I never made the claim that they suggested to do it, nor did I say
why did you bring it up?
Name Democrat, nor did I say any big name. Because I specifically said it was already in their playbook.
It wasn't in their playbook. This was just a hypothetical scenario that they ran through. Whereas Donald Trump pressured the vice president to go through with that plan. Now, if John Podesta was trying to get Kamala Harris to refuse to certify the election in 2024, then I would say, okay, fuck it. Yeah, the Democrats are anti-democracy. That's not what the war room scenario was. John Podesta wasn't even in collaboration with the Biden administration. And ultimately, the person responsible for certifying the election in that election was Vice President Mike Pence. So there's not even a feasible, dirt paved road that they could take down this. It's ridiculous. And if you agree that it wasn't a plan and that there was no corroboration with any of the levers in government at that point, then why the fuck would you bring it up to pivot away from an actual real plan that Donald Trump had?
Well, because there was big name Democrats who was actually a part of it. And what was the name of the lady who created it? Rosa Brooks. And she was specifically
Do you acknowledge that they never proposed this to any elected Democrat?
Well, that wasn't my claim, though. So I would say,
do you acknowledge that John Eastman and Donald Trump did propose this to Vice President Mike Pence?
Say that again?
Do you agree that John Eastman and Donald Trump did propose this to Mike Pence?
For him to unilaterally just throw it or give it to him?
Yep.
No.
Okay, have you ever read the Eastman memo?
You can send me it.
Okay. Why did you feel confident to actually talk to me about this? I mean, if you say you've watched a couple of my debates on this, why would you not look up the core lawyer who made the theory to do it? Why would you not look at his words?
Well, specifically when I was trying to find, because I was on your TikTok lives, and usually it's people for 5 minutes and whatnot, or even, the actual details don't get dived into too much.
I bring the Eastman memo
especially
up
when I don't have
often.
Discord, so I don't have Twitch, so I don't know if being on Safari or Chrome kind of slows it up. But every time I was trying to speed the shit up, it was, it was a hassle a little bit.
Okay.
All right, guys, let's get back on topic. Let's not debate about who's watching.
I don't know if there's anywhere else to go with this topic. I don't know.
Well, I guess we can just go into. Do y'all want closing statements or do y'all not want to do closing statements?
No, you don't.
All right. I guess you can go first right here.
Okay. My closing is that Donald Trump did do that. If you read the memo that his lawyer wrote, it lays that out. I would think that, if you challenge me to a debate a couple days ahead, that you would do any research on any of these topics, but maybe fuck me, I guess. I don't know. Okay.
Will, do you have anything?
Well, specifically, if I know that what your blanket statement is, but if I don't hear the arguments, and that's all, I mean, you can say that's on me for not doing more research. I mean, I did do a good amount in terms of trying to figure out, but I felt like I was going defensive too much, and I wanted to go a little offensive. But from my understanding is that I would have went in a completely different direction anyways.
Well, I do want to say, Will, you do have a 6-month-old at home, so let's keep that in mind, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's a big task.
Listen, I respect him as a parent, but maybe you shouldn't.
I give you this, buddy. In terms of being unprepared, you can throw that at me. Well, we'll see with the incitement, because I think I do have something there. But in terms of because I would have thought, honestly, I was a couple days leading up to it, up until maybe yesterday or so, I was honestly thinking that the weaponization of the DOJ and the uprooting democracy kind of would have been in the same general realm. So I was kind of, because the claim is almost the same thing. Not exactly, but in terms of the 2020 election. So I thought we would have.
Well, yeah, good news for you then, because the next topic will be inciting violence. If you want to go ahead and make your claim on that, or make your opening statement, and then Reno will do it, and then 20-minute open discussion, then closing.
Okay, so, all right, so from my understanding, you want to say that Donald Trump incites violence, and how do we know that? Well, it's because, from my understanding, you say it's a coincidental timed tweet, not quoting you exactly, but coincidental timed tweet of Trump's about being disappointed in Mike Pence in regards to the certification of the 2020 election. And at the time, the rioters had breached the grounds and the Capitol while also chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." But while the timing of the tweet might make the situation a bit more complex, it doesn't prove anything, and it doesn't actually prove he wants the violence. It just shows he was hyper-focused on the election being stolen. But if you think the criticism of Pence at the time of heightened controversy is likely to incite or produce such action of violence, then your argument is any criticism of anyone at any point of heightened controversy is meeting the standard for incitement. Like, for instance, with all the stories of people rioting against the ICE agents during the Trump administration this time around, have you condemned any of the Democrats and, frankly, yourself who criticize ICE in the height of a deportation operation, saying they are ripping people's rights away and calling it inhumane practices? Or is criticizing the government by inflaming tensions with systemic racist chants at the time of when a black man is killed by police? Is that considered incitement of violence? If your bar really, if what meets the bar for incitement of violence really is if the message in question is likely to incite or produce such action or of violence, then why have you not condemned the whole Democrat platform for comparing Trump to Hitler and immigration enforcement to Hitler's Gestapo? How about, was it incitement under the first Trump administration, when Republicans were trying to replace Obamacare, the Democrats said, if we remove Obamacare, people will die? How about when Steve Scalise was shot at that ball game and the shooter was someone who believed in Bernie's rhetoric about Obamacare? Is that incitement? Now, if you believe so, what are we really arguing here, right? Bernie, are we really going to argue that Bernie shouldn't speak what he believed to be true? I mean, if you say Trump incited violence, what would you call it when Kamala Harris is campaigning in an election during the George Floyd controversy, and as she's saying, "Good, these protests should not stop, and beware, they're not going to stop," when clearly the public perspective was mainly focused on the riots, yet she's going out and advocating for people with a bail fund. If you want to call that a whataboutism for me bringing up all of these other instances with the Democrat Party, I would say the whole point is that you're selectively looking at Trump, saying that he's inciting violence, while ignoring the greater context. Now, your argument is Trump is bad like all other politicians, and I wouldn't. If your argument was Trump is bad like all other politicians, I probably wouldn't disagree with you. But if you want to admit that all politicians incite violence, I mean, I guess. But for me, I feel like when we say someone incites violence, I think we mean to say that they are intending for people to get violent. And I don't think we have evidence to prove that that's the case for Donald Trump. But the reason you're using January 6th is to utilize the selective bias to frame up Trump as being this unique boogeyman in a pool of angels. Now, could Donald Trump have done more to de-escalate the situation? Probably. But yet 6 months prior, he was a witness like everyone else to Democrats turning a blind eye to a whole summer's worth of riots while they gaslit the American people, saying 2020, the summer of love. So I'm wondering why the standard is different from Donald Trump.
So in our previous conversations, I gave a very clear standard for incitement to violence. None of it was ever that it's just high rhetoric at a time of high conflict. Never said that in my life. So all of the examples or hypotheticals that you gave me for incitement, those don't apply. I agree. In order to show incitement, it's rare that we have a direct call to action. When proving murder, we don't need to prove guilty mind via a direct confession. The standard by which we show incitement is if speech is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action, and such speech is likely to incite or produce such actions. On January 6th, 2021, while his own supporters were in the Capitol looking for his vice president to hang at the final stage of a pressure campaign against the vice president to force him to decertify electors, for Donald Trump to be certified as president, Trump still decided against telling his supporters to leave or de-escalating, and instead decided to further inflame the mob after seeing one of the attendees express his anger at Pence on the news. It was no mystery that this group was violent and that they would be violent prior. I cannot think of it as another reason that Donald Trump would see one of his supporters rioting at the Capitol, expressing his anger at his own vice president on the news, and then 2 minutes later send that tweet, especially when we see other groups in the Capitol at that point chanting, "Where is Pence?" and "Hang Mike Pence," and then decide to attack his own vice president for not uprooting democracy for him. If it's any mystery as to why he did this, It surely should have been erased in January of this year when he went on to pardon nearly every single person in that Capitol who engaged in violence against police officers who were looking for the politicians to handcuff with zip ties, to hang on the gallows outside. That's no shocker. He pardoned all of them. So it's no shocker as to what his incentives were. It's very clear. The thing that incited him to send that tweet was seeing one of the supporters on the news talk about how angry Mike Pence was making them. And he knew that his supporters were in the Capitol looking for Mike Pence to pressure him with violence to decertify the election. There's no other conceivable reason why Donald Trump would, instead of telling them to go home, further inflame his supporters' opinion of his own vice president in this situation. And I do want to add, okay, if I'm using his actions, his real provable actions on January 6th to paint him as a boogeyman, maybe he's a boogeyman. Okay, if he walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Okay.
All right, yeah, so 20 minutes open Tomville.
So from my understanding, when we talked last, or maybe it was the second to last time, when you asked me what meets the bar for incitement, I'm almost positive that you specifically didn't bring up, the producing imminent lawless action, but just specifically brought up, is it likely to produce such action of violence, right?
Yeah, sure. It's the likelihood to produce imminent lawless action. Yeah. Okay,
so then let me pose to you, telling the country that there is extreme amounts of systemic racism. Do you think that would piss people off?
Yes, but it's not likely to incite imminent lawless action. Imminent implies time.
Because
imminent implies time. In order to directly incite somebody, it needs to be shown that the incitement was timely. So just general rhetoric like the systems are systemically racist, or the politicians don't care, or even that like Trump is a pedophile, these aren't incitements to violence, because even though it would piss somebody off, it's not a direct call. It's not like an A follows B. It's an A follows, general feelings. It's just like raising the temperature. So the difference is that imminently Donald Trump sends that tweet. There's no other explanation that would explain his mind state at that time other than inflaming his mob of supporters that are in the Capitol looking to hang him. And believe it or not, those people continued to be violent and stomp on Capitol police officers' head, looking to arrest politicians with zip ties. This is a much clearer example of a direct call with no other, like the guilty mind is incredibly clear. He sent this tweet 2 minutes after he saw one of his supporters on the TV talking about how pissed off at Mike Pence he is.
Yeah, so the problem with it is that I just asked you the question if your definition would not include the imminent lawless action, which you clarified, because I said you only clarified and I said it would not be meeting the first part, but only the second part. So is the case,
I said in the opening that it needs to meet both parts, though. And in our previous conversation,
that is not what you said. The first conversation that we had,
in our previous conversations, it was incredibly implied. I didn't say it explicitly, but it was incredibly implied by the fact that I was pointing out that Donald Trump had no other incentive than to inflame speech. That speaks to his state of mind. So obviously, I found it important in our first conversations, or I wouldn't be talking about Donald Trump's state of mind.
Well, just if you're implying, so you're basically saying that it's just implied that the tweet is likely to produce imminent lawless action.
I'm saying it absolutely was likely to produce imminent lawless action. I'm saying in all likelihoods that it was directed to produce imminent lawless action. So it absolutely it undebatably inflamed his protesters, his supporters that were in the Capitol. But the thing that we actually need to debate is whether or not Donald Trump knew that would happen. My question is, what other incentive would Donald Trump have to see a group of supporters chanting "Where is Pence?" and "Hang Mike Pence," and then to tweet out a tweet attacking Mike Pence rather than telling them to go home?
Because there was an immediate recess. This is my theory. There was before Trump had went up, he had known that during the rally they were going to start that process. And I think with all of the urging that he tried to get Trump, or at least tried to get Pence on the same page as him before January 6th, I think that he was almost expecting with the protesters marching down to the Capitol, he was thinking that Pence would have overturned the vote by the time Trump would have got back into office, being briefed with what had went down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that considering that he was evacuated, and then 10 minutes afterwards, the tweet was made, I can see where that's specifically, him voicing the disappointment because the session's completely over. And he's specifically only hyper fixated on the election process, not anything to do with breaching in the Capitol.
Well, that's absolutely not true, because the thing that caused him to tweet the thing, as reported in the Jack Smith report, was him seeing one of his supporters voice his displeasure with Mike Pence on the TV at the Capitol. So obviously he was focused on the riot at the Capitol, as everybody in fucking America was.
Wait, just repeat that one more time. I kind of cut out there.
The thing that caused him to tweet this out, according to the Jack Smith report, was him seeing a person that was at the Capitol talking about how angry he was at Mike Pence for not stealing the election for Donald Trump. And obviously he was paying attention to the riot. Every single aide that reported to this said that he was watching the riot unfold on Fox News, and every single person in the country was doing that on January 6th. So obviously that's what Trump was doing. And I agree that the reason that Donald Trump was sending people to march onto the Capitol was to pressure Mike Pence to decertify the electors. I agree. And then whenever Mike Pence ultimately told him that he wasn't going to do it, he probably got really pissed, and then he probably tried to incite violence against him.
Which would lead to that tweet, and that's why he posted it?
Yes.
I just don't think that theory is believable. You really think that just because he said no, he was trying to incite violence against Pence?
I'm saying, why wouldn't he tell the supporters to go home if he had no violent intentions?
I mean, why would he tell the supporters? Why would he tell the supporters to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard? Why would he also take other steps prior to January 3rd, specifically quotes from Mark Milley, saying that he was trying to get National Guard, whoever, or National Guard, active duty, or regular, non-active duty soldiers there to make sure the event was safe?
No, he wasn't trying to get the National Guard there to make sure the event was safe. He was trying to get the National Guard there to protect his soldiers from the Capitol Police officers. Okay, that's not what the National Guard was there for. But also, Donald Trump has the ultimate authority, as we saw, to deploy the National Guard in D.C. That's the National Guard falls within. It's a federal district that falls within the president. Why didn't he just federalize? Why didn't he just do the National Guard thing then? He clearly has unilateral power to do it. Why would he? Why would it need to go through Nancy Pelosi? Or
I'll tell you why. I will tell you why. Because he's not a professional. Not to mention, he was also being told beforehand it would be bad for optics if he had him there. And when he offered it, that's what they also gave the explanation for. Was it would have been bad for optics. We'll take a couple of these National Guard, but they have to be on the road duty.
So you brought up the National Guard. I'm not saying that he should have preemptively deployed the National Guard because they didn't think it was an issue. I'm saying if he really, really cared about violence bubbling up, why didn't he deploy the National Guard until I think the National Guard was deployed at like 6 p.m.?
I just gave you that answer.
You think he was concerned about preserving optics while people were in the Capitol for fucking 4 hours?
Well, you also would acknowledge that, especially there was a lot of excuses in terms of why I'm just giving you an example. At the same time of year, or at least a couple months prior, during the BLM riots, a lot of them were saying, you just got to let the fire die out. And that's what a lot of that's not an unknown thing to hear
but
either.
Obviously, I mean, I agree. They probably should have deployed the National Guard earlier for a lot of the BLM riots. I agree with that. But do you acknowledge that there's also a difference between rioting in a city and rioting in the fucking Capitol, where all of the where all of the Congress people and the vice president are certifying the results of the election? That's a very different thing.
If you're labeling it in terms of like insurrection, no, because if they're trying to burn down federal or even state buildings, that's not definitely
those two things need to be treated the same with the same level of severity.
Well, how much more severity do you think these other people have?
Oh my God. Obviously, a protest to decertify the results of the election is more serious than a riot. Yes,
obviously. Is it really that big of a difference is it really that big of a difference? I mean, obviously, optics-wise, because it's definitely going to be a bigger story. But in terms like if someone tried to go in and break into the Capitol in Harrisburg with a whole group of people, that would be pretty damn bad. And I would say that would definitely, because you don't really.
after you reach a certain bar, you can't really get that worse. And I think that especially when you're trying to break into the Capitol, and from your understanding, they were trying to hang Mike Pence.
Well, don't say from my understanding like this is an unproven claim. We have the footage of all of the supporters in the Capitol chanting "Hang Mike Pence" and "Where is Pence?" Yes, it's not from my understanding.
Can you show me where it wasn't just the Pence chants rather than like the actual like what would you call that? Conspiracy to actually commit murder?
You said by my account they were chanting "Hang Mike Pence." This wasn't by my account. There's video of it happening. The reason that you're saying by your account is because you're trying to like paint this as a conspiracy where I'm like misrepresenting something or tweaking something.
No. You're completely strawmanning me. No, I'm not saying that there weren't people there that were chanting "Hang Mike Pence." You understand that, right?
I didn't understand that. Now I do. I just wanted to make sure that we all agreed that there were Trump supporters in the Capitol.
I'm just asking, give me the intent. Give me the intent. Give me the conspiracy. Give me the conspiracy, or not even conspiracy. I shouldn't say conspiracy, but give me the evidence that would lead to someone getting charged with conspiracy of murder against Mike Pence specifically. And obviously, you're not going to say that
they were saying
people chanting. Yeah, that's not how. I'm so confused now.
If a group is chanting to hang somebody, they want to hang them.
So if that's the case, that would meet the standard for conspiracy to murder. How many people were charged with conspiracy to murder?
I don't know particularly the I think in order for a conspiracy to murder, you have to have like a premeditated plan. I don't know if this probably wasn't a premeditated plan, but I'm saying that it speaks to the mindset of the Trump supporters in the Capitol. If they're chanting to hang Mike Pence, that they probably want to hang Mike Pence. I mean, that's not too unbelievable to me.
Yeah, without bringing any gallows or anything like that.
They literally erected a gallows outside.
Yeah. So one that would not even be able to support a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah, they were really shitty at it. I don't know what to tell you. They're dumbasses. They're not carpenters.
Yeah, so wait, you would also go to assume that it was the Trump supporters that built the gallows and put it there, right? At 6:30 in the morning.
I don't think we know who did it.
I think you're right.
Okay.
Well, do we need any more of open conversation, or y'all want to go in closing statements with the debate?
We can go in closings.
We can roll it.
All right. Rendon went first last time in closing statements. I'll let Will go first here. Will, what do you have on this topic? And then that'll be the end of the debate after Rendon goes.
I mean, pretty much we can run in and specifically say that, we can analyze Donald Trump's every single tweet and everything would be, how would I say it? Like if you're going to hyper analyze everything that Trump is saying specifically, even when he's not even acknowledging the violence or anything like that in terms of the tweet, and it's just because the tweet was timed specifically when the rioters had breached the Capitol, I don't think that would legally, or I don't think it would legally meet that standard of incitement of violence specifically. And pretty much I'll say that I did lose the debate specifically because I didn't pick the debate right, and we definitely should have talked more about the things on the other side because, like I said, it's pretty cut and dry when you want to talk about if Donald Trump incites violence, and you also have to hold these other people accountable, specifically whether or not it's in a debate or anything like that. Because if you want to stay consistent with it, then I think that's a good reason to call it out. So I think that'll be it.
All right, Renyo, last closing statement of the debate.
Yeah, I feel like I proved everything I need to prove. I feel like my standard of incitement was incredibly clear. And, if you wanted to, hypocrisy bro me, first of all, I want to make sure that anybody who tries to claim hypocrisy within me, we're living in the same reality. It's pretty clear that no Trump supporter lives in the same reality as me. So I don't want to listen to any fucking purity text for anybody. Okay. It's ridiculous, okay? The fact that you're trying to hypocrisy bro me when you can't acknowledge that Donald Trump tried to steal the election and all of the evidence is out there, and you just disagreed on whether or not that was the first go, like the first suggestion that Donald Trump made. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. 90% of Trump supporters are children. The other ones are just either uninformed or like the sub 1% category that are just like have their head in the right place. I just don't understand why they viewed Trump as the right decision. Yeah, I don't know. It's
When I put my input, that would probably be because Trump basically saved the Republican Party.
you could say saved, but I mean,
Listen,
insurrection, all right?
Well, that's the end of the debate. I'm a
Saved the
conservative
Republican Party,
myself.
killed America. I don't know. Okay.
The MAGA Republican.
Okay, I appreciate you for
I'm a
hosting
regular
that, man.
Republican, dude. Don't diss on my party, man. Come on. But yeah,
well-
both of y'all. Thank you all for the debate. It was fun moderating it. I guess I'm gonna go now, but both of y'all have a good night, guys.
Love you, buddy.
Thanks for the pod.
So.
Oh my god. I don't know, man. I don't know. What are you gonna do?